Balrican Shadow Craft, Outer Kuiper Belt, 18.3 time units after destruction of Hunter Pack. Sub-Chieftain Skirk continued to monitor the light and transmission signals with his instruments, the delicate mechanisms on the hull of the small, single-occupant shadow craft tasting the interstellar medium. He stared at the sensor diagrams in shock as his eyes roamed over the dimly lit screens. He replayed the recordings again, seeing the void black ships of the disgusting inferiors laying waste to each formation, as they tore through them like a talon through the soft underbelly of prey. He hissed fearfully as he watched the last battle again, the smaller black ships ripping apart the much larger Balrican battleships with ease. Not even one of the unclean ships had been destroyed as they hurtled through the formations at speeds that were impossible. Panicked thoughts filled his mind, afraid to give a voice to them for fear of being struck down by the Holy Ones for such impure thinking. Masters, save us. Our most evil enemies are back. The whisperings are true, and we face the Machinati again. How could the Masters forsake us like this? Are we not their holy warriors? As his vessel continued to smell the space around it and capture more evidence to be studied by the Wise Ones, the information processing system alerted him to an unusual frequency it had tasted. He scanned the symbols being displayed on the screens, not understanding why the device could not categorize it. The frequency was obviously from the filthy creatures, but it was not encrypted, nor was it a verbal or coded signal. A Skirk sent the frequency to the audio system and instructed the system to activate. The most fearsome noises he had ever heard came blaring out of the system, causing him to keel over as he tried to cover the hearing holes on the sides of his head with his primary hands. It was not enough, and he heard the evil chanting of the impure ones through them, obviously beseeching their false masters to assist them in the battle. The banging filled him with terror, and he voided his bowels on the deck plates, feeling the warm foulness as it dribbled down the back of his legs. Too loud, he realized with panic as the terrible sounds continued to blast him with evilness that echoed throughout the tiny compartment. The stench of his bowels permeated the air, and he retched onto the deck plates as he trembled uncontrollably. Forcing himself back up, he lurched to the control panel and fumbled with his two secondary hands to turn the horrible noises off while still covering his earholes with his primary hands. He finally found the right control and slammed a clawed fist down on it, smashing through the interface and damaging the panel. The noises continued, and he screamed for the control system to turn off the audio system. It did not respond, the horrible sounds continuing to reverberate throughout the small shadow craft. He had caused too much damage to the control panel when he smashed through the interface, and it was no longer functioning properly. "Masters, please save me," Skirk screeched before babbling incoherently as he collapsed onto his knee joints. He prostrated himself, ignoring the clammy wetness and stench of his excrement as he pressed his head into the foulness and prayed with all his might. A bright light filled the tiny compartment visible through his tightly clenched eyelids. He lifted his head back up in awe that the Holy Ones had answered him and come to his ship to save him. For a moment everything stopped for him, even the dreadful noises of the terrible enemy transmission as he hurried to the small tinted porthole above the panels and looked through it to see his salvation. The terrible noise came back with a vengeance as he saw not the Masters but a small black ship. He saw the flash of the grapplers shooting out from the bottom of the ship and hurtling towards him in slow motion before he felt the shadow craft suddenly jolt. The craft jerked again, more violently this time, and he was knocked off his feet as his ensnared vessel was pulled to its doom. He hooted maniacally, his mind now broken, as he began slamming his head against the metal deck plates as hard as he could. All he wanted was for the abominable noises to cease as he tried to break open his skull and end his torment. He was still hooting wildly when he slammed his head one last time, and the noises ended. Privateer Yoni Lutera, the Star Marauder, System J-185, Outer Kuiper Belt. "Easy does it, Jameson, just like reeling in a fish," Khan said quietly as he gently patted Jameson's left shoulder. He was standing behind him and watching nervously as the grapplers continued to pull the small ship toward the star. Jameson grunted in acknowledgement of Khan's soft coaching as he continued to monitor the retraction rate of the grappling cables and maintain the proper tension. So far, there have been no attempts to break free from the grapplers or any attempts at sending distress calls besides the poorly concealed radio emissions emanating from inside the craft. The emissions suddenly showed up on their scanners and allowed the star to locate the source. They were only 4 light minutes away and had no idea the small ship was even there and so close to their own position. It was obviously a Balrican version of a spy craft or surveillance vessel to have such stealth capabilities, and Khan wanted to get both the star and the prize ship away before the Republic forces in the system realized they were here. They had been following the Balrican fleet for the last 6 days, using the stealth tech the Republic had outfitted onto their ship for the mission. The stealth tech was a generation out of date, but the pirate ship and crew had other ways of remaining hidden that had been learned over many years. The addition of the outdated tech enhanced the abilities of their own methods, and the Balricans never knew they were being followed by the sleek, frigate-sized pirate ship. What really helped them the most were the null dampeners that prevented the Balricans from detecting the null space propagation waves of their ship as they traveled behind the fleet. This tech was most certainly not out of date, and the AI program embedded within it would destroy the ship if it detected any attempts to scan or modify the dampeners. Khan assigned his 2 most trusted men to kill anyone who attempted to go near the engineering compartment the device was installed in. After following them for several days, Khan leaned heavily on his special forces training as well as the decades of experience and wisdom accumulated by Yuri to collect a veritable treasure trove of intelligence about the capabilities of the new enemy. The arrogant murder raptors made no attempts whatsoever to observe even the most basic operational security measures, making Khan's job incredibly easy and far less dangerous than it ought to have been. Masint, Sigint, Tekint. All of it was collected with ease, and Khan even used old-style telescopes to collect images of weapons systems and other hull apparatuses. The amount of data they collected was incredible, and Khan had half a mind to ask for the bounty to be doubled just based on the intelligence they were able to procure along with the prize ship if they captured one. They knew the fleet was hunting down the scattered insectoid survivors, since they were able to detect the same unique insectoid drive signatures the Balricans had been tracking across many light years. Khan couldn't help but feel bad for them, despite the vehement hatred most pirates had for the insectoids. Operating along the lucrative insectoid Commonwealth border region was fraught with risks, mostly from the insectoid ships that mercilessly attacked and destroyed dozens of pirate ships every year. Most of the crew relished the destruction of the insectoids here, unable to see past their own petty desires for revenge and cheering on the destruction of tens of thousands of insectoid ships. The morons viewed it as the insectoids finally getting their long-overdue comeuppance, and considered it to pay back for all the pirate ships they destroyed and the billions they killed. Khan saw it differently. This was evidence that the most powerful species of the quadrant after the Malit just had their asses handed to them by an even worse enemy than they ever were, and they would not stop with just the insectoids. Now 6 days later, they found themselves flashing into the outer boundary of the Kuiper Belt, as they detected the signs of an impending flash-out from the Balrican fleet in front of them. The star immediately disappeared among the icy ancient leftovers from the formation of the solar system as the stealth protocols were activated and began collecting intelligence with their passive scanners. The Republic had given them 3 spy drones, again with killer AIs just waiting to murder them if they even looked at them the wrong way. He quickly deployed them, their null space flashes barely registering on his scanners as they went deeper into the system to observe the Balrican fleet. Khan relished the open-mouthed shock of the bridge crew as the light from the first, then the second, and finally the third and nearest battle reached the star. The fools had been in the hinterland for too long and had a very inflated view of their own combat prowess. Used to dealing with the casualty-averse Commonwealth Navy, the multi-species crew had no idea what the Republic military forces were truly capable of. During the battles, he noticed the furtive glances from the bridge crew as they looked at him. They knew he was in the Republic Special Forces, and as one of the few humans on the ship, he was relegated to the same capabilities as the others. Now, though, he could see the newfound respect and fear they had for their captain as they glanced at him quickly before looking away. They had seen him kill the Ominian captain for refusing to respond to the Zengtian distress call, an unspoken law of space that even the most bloodthirsty of pirates dared not to break. They saw him slaughter a well-known human assassin with his own favored weapon of choice. Now they just saw Republic military ships utterly destroy a force more than 10 times their number and tonnage. The Republic capabilities displayed for all to see would be equated to the captain's own in the eyes of the crew. Good. Let them fear me. Now I won't have to deal with stupid challenges anymore, Khan thought to himself as the Balrican vessel continued to be reeled in. The signal emissions were still coming from the small ship, and he wanted to board it and turn it off before they propagated into the inner system. Come on, hurry up, he murmured to himself as the ship neared the docking clamps located on the ventral hull. A minute later, the clunking of the clamps grabbing the vessel could be heard as they echoed through the bulkheads of the ship. Khan pointed to 3 bridge members and turned towards the exit hatch, the selected crew falling in behind him as they left the bridge and hurried down to the ventral airlock. Yuri and 2 others were waiting outside the hatch when they arrived, and Khan palmed the panel on the side of the airlock. The light turned from red to green, and the hatch silently slid open. Yuri handed Khan his weapon belt, and Khan wrapped it around his hips before pulling out the Colt M1911 pistol from the holster. It had been passed down from father to son, and it still worked like a charm after 231 years. He quickly ejected the magazine to ensure it was properly loaded before sliding it back in and cocking the hammer. Khan favored it over the more modern weapons for boarding actions, the .45 ACP hollow point rounds perfect for CQB in the small, confined spaces surrounding airlocks. The slow-moving heavy rounds had incredible stopping power, capable of penetrating through the thick hides and musculature common in some species, even dropping enraged Zanxin with a properly placed round. The hollow point also prevented rounds from breaching bulkheads and hulls, greatly reducing unintended casualties and limiting damage to areas outside the battle area. In a way, it was a more humane weapon as Khan tried his best to disable rather than kill when boarding ships, and no one wanted to continue fighting after being hit by a .45 ACP in their arms and legs. Another benefit was the unexpectedly loud sound of the gun firing in the tiny compartments, often stunning defenders into a momentary inaction or causing them to instinctively drop their weapons and cover their ears. No one expected such an archaic weapon to be used, not when more deadly pulse rifles or short-range plasma pistols were readily available and preferred by most pirates. Looking at the others, he nodded to them before palming the second airlock. A few moments later, the hatch slid to the side, and Khan stepped to the side to allow the hacker to go through the short tube to try to open the Balrican airlock hatch without having to breach it. The hacker connected her scanner to the hull next to the airlock and inspected the Balrican panel before fishing out several wires from the scanner and inserting them into small ports along the side of the panel. Machine code appeared on the small scanner screen as the hacking program tried to figure out the Balrican operating system. Less than 10 seconds later, the hacker turned back around and nodded her head. She was ready to open the airlock. Khan nodded to her and she tapped on the scanner before beating a hasty retreat behind the boarding party. Khan palmed the second airlock shut as soon as she passed it. 6 seconds later, the Balrican airlock opened, and he examined the atmospheric composition report being displayed on the scanner as the sensors tested the air that came out of the Balrican airlock. 74.02% nitrogen, 23.95% oxygen, 0.82% argon, 0.07% carbon dioxide, and 0.00037% methane. Temperature: 40.5556 degrees Celsius, uncategorized. Bacterial and viral contamination detected. Class 3 immune modulator recommended. Khan raised a hand and signaled for the team to inject themselves as he continued to read the report. It was going to be hot, but overall the air was almost the same as most spacefaring species, with some minor differences in the trace gases. He injected himself with the recommended modulator before turning around to face them. All good? They all indicated readiness, and he turned back and palmed the hatch open. It slid to the side again, and he went first, his pistol out. He reached the Balrican airlock and entered it, flipping down the opti-sight glass over his dominant eye as he entered the dark interior. There was a second airlock, and the hacker efficiently repeated the process before tapping the scanner and retreating behind them again. 6 seconds later, the airlock slid aside, and Khan gagged from the sudden stench as the interior air came rushing out. The others started gagging as well, and he heard the hacker behind them throwing up. He turned around, trying to keep his own breakfast down as he looked at the rest of them. The hacker looked him dead in the eyes as she wiped the vomit from her lips with the back of her arm before speaking. "Nuh-uh. I am not going in there, Captain. I will remain out here and have one of the crew bring me a helmet. It smells like unwashed asses and dead bodies." That was exactly what it smelled like now that she cataloged it, and he slapped on the comm node on his upper left chest and spoke into it. "Khan here. We need 5 void helmets brought to the airlock immediately." They all retreated beyond the first Balrican airlock and closed it as they waited for the helmets to arrive. The hacker had the ship recycle the air in the tube and the airlocks, the fresh air taking away the fetid stench. He could swear he still smelled the disgusting stench lingering on his uniform, though. Yuri complained about the smell still in his nose, and 2 others agreed with him as the helmets finally arrived. They all put them on, and Khan led the way again as they reopened the hatch and passed through the second airlock. The transparent void helmets thankfully prevented them from smelling the air, and Khan went down the short corridor until they came to another hatch. This one had 4 handles, and both Khan and Yuri grabbed 2 handles each and slid their sides of the doors open. As soon as the doors parted, loud sounds came through the gap and filled the short corridor, echoing off the bare metal bulkheads. Khan turned to Yuri, scarcely believing what they were hearing. "Is that heavy metal, Yuri?" he asked incredulously. Yuri nodded, surprise on his face as he answered, "I think so, Captain. It is not of any heavy metal I have heard before, but that is definitely human music." Khan swore quietly to himself, wondering what the hell was going on as he slipped through the opening they had made and pointed his pistol in front of him. He continued down the second corridor, the opti-glass casting everything in a pale green hue out of his right eye as his left tried to acclimate to the darkness. The music became louder as he got closer to it, and the corridor veered sharply to the right. He leaned against the bulkhead, signaling for the rest to halt as he took a small device out of his belt and stretched it out, the flexible metal curving into the shape he wanted. He angled it around the bulkhead and pressed on the end of it. The camera function activated, and a small hologram appeared in front of him. He could see down the tunnel without exposing himself, and he moved the camera around before focusing on the opening at the end of the corridor. There was light coming out of it, and that seemed to be the source of the human music, the alien-sounding chanting and the frenetic beat giving him chills. There were no signs of booby traps or danger, and he turned the corner, sighting his pistol at the brighter opening as he headed towards it. His combat boots made no noise, and he continued alone, the others still waiting around the corner for Khan to give them the signal to join him. He reached the opening and peered in, trying to limit how much he exposed his head. The music was very loud now, and it was starting to annoy the shit out of him as it drowned out all other sounds and prevented him from hearing possible danger. He leaned into the opening a little more, sighting his pistol as he shifted his gaze around the small compartment. He froze as he saw a body on the floor, only able to see the bottom half of the scaly brown skin from his vantage point. He pointed the pistol at it and waited, counting to 30. It did not move at all, and he steeled himself as he finally passed entirely through the opening. There was a bank of equipment blocking his view of the upper portion of the Balrican body on the floor, and he crouched behind it before peeking out. He finally saw the upper torso and head of the Balrican as it was lying face down on the metal deck. It was not moving at all, and it was in a puddle of brown and red fluid. He moved closer, and now he could see the red fluid oozing out of its face. He stared at its torso area for a few moments, and he could see the faintest rising and lowering of its body as it breathed. It was still alive but seemed to be unconscious. He reached down to the belt and pulled out the stunner with his left hand as he kept the pistol pointed at the center mass of the Balrican. He triggered the stunner, and the Balrican twitched once. He triggered the stunner one more time for good measure, and this time the Balrican didn't twitch at all. It was out cold now, or maybe even dead. He stood back up, his heart slamming in his chest, and backed out of the compartment before hurrying back down the corridor. He signaled for them to follow and lead them back to the compartment. Yuri gasped at the sight of the Balrican on the floor as Khan ordered the hacker to find a way to shut off the annoying music. The others scanned the small compartment as he and Yuri took out ties and tried their best to avoid getting the Balrican bodily fluids on their gloves as they tied it up. It was still breathing, and Khan looked around the compartment in excitement as he realized that they were going to be getting their bounty after all. The music finally turned off, and the hacker reached into her bag before placing several small scanners on different panels. He sent Yuri with 2 others to clear the rest of the ship, though he doubted there were any other Balricans in the small vessel. A minute later, Yuri returned to the compartment and reported the rest of the ship clear. Smiling widely, Yuri grabbed Khan in a crushing bear hug as the others smiled at the sight of the stern quartermaster expressing pure joy. "Captain, we are really going to collect on the bounty. I can't believe our good fortune. I really didn't think we would be able to do this, yet here we are with a ship and a living captive." Khan was smiling as well and was just about to reply when a bright flash of light came through the 2 small tinted portholes behind the panels and briefly illuminated the dim compartment. Khan's smile faded as his comm note erupted with the sound of panicked yelling. "Captain, 3 Republic ships just flashed out and surrounded us. They are locking weapons on us. Republic Hive World, TOI 700D, 101.4 light-years from Earth, May 28, 2176 AD. Sister, why did you not tell me of the sounds the animals make?" Aurora's claws jerked at the powerful, unexpected thoughts from her sister entering her mind, causing her to break one of the strands from her silk gland. She tossed the half-completed lattice away, angry with her sister and herself for ruining the special sharing focuser she had spent much time on. Pushing her anger away so her sister wouldn't react negatively to the emotion, she breathed deeply through her spiracles several times until calmness returned to her. She tapped into the vast network of ancestors within her to add their minds to hers and extend her thought range. "Sister, I'm happy to share thoughts with you. What sounds are you thinking of? The animals make many sounds. It is their gift and their curse to exist in endless noise and never hear the silence we know. The sounds they call music. Yes, the music they make with objects. Why did you not share this with me, sister? Did you wish to keep this gift to yourself?" Aurora resented the implication of being false with her sister and let some of what she felt go with her thoughts as she responded. "It is not mine to hide or hoard with greed, sister. Retract your accusation, or I will stop sharing thoughts with you. I ask for your pardon, sister of mine. I was angry you did not share this with me. I thought you wished to keep this joy for only yourself. I can feel in your thoughts now this was not so. I will not pardon you. I will forget you ever thought such thoughts, therefore there is nothing to pardon. I did not expect you to reach this stage of sharing so quickly, sister. What did Bandit Friend share with you?" "Thank you, sister. Bandit Friend gifted me with the first one when I shared how sad I was to never be able to go and see these wondrous concepts and places of the animals. I thought I was trapped until my time to join the ancestors came, but I was wrong. Bandit Friend took me to places with his music, my mind and spirit going where they had never been before. It was wondrous. Was it Moonlight Sonata, sister? That is his favorite one to play for the first time when he gifts others with this beauty." "Yes, sister, this one was the first, and I demanded more. It was only the Hive Mother within who asked me to stop and let him rest after 14 solar hours had passed. I became ashamed of my greed and asked Bandit Friend to pardon me. But he only grimaced at me and told me he was happy to share with me. I like this machine animal, and I see now why you love him so. I do, sister. He saved me from having to cull my daughter, and he spared me when I wanted to die after the wrongness I committed. I am who I am now, only because of Bandit Friend. Do you think Bandit Friend will help me when the time comes for my daughters to leave their pupae? It is soon, my sister. Their thoughts grow stronger each day, and I can already feel the uniqueness of each one making herself known to me. I do not want to have to cull them. Please, sister, let Bandit Friend stay with me and spare me from this terrible fate like he did for you. Bandit Friend is not a drone for me or you to order, sister. I cannot compel him to do what he does not want, but I do not have to, sister. Just ask him, and he will do so. I know he will help you. It is his nature to assist others. Thank you, sister. I will ask. Bandit friend has shared with me the new way of sharing thoughts you have dreamt of. Does it work, sister? The claw signs are wonderful but cumbersome sometimes, and I feel like it is insufficient for some thoughts and concepts. I feel like this sometimes too, though it becomes adequate after some practice, especially with Bandit friend and other animals that I frequently share thoughts with. He has a powerful mind, sister, more powerful than even hive mothers. Sometimes I only share a few thoughts to convey many with him, and he understands me fully. A flash of indignation and resentment came from her sister, and Aurora ignored it, knowing it was just an instinctual response to her claim of Bandit friend having a more powerful mind than them. The emotions disappeared as her sister suppressed them, and she continued. As to your question, if the new talking focusers work, they do somewhat. I am refining the creation process and hope to continue experimenting with them when Bandit friend returns to my hive. The animals are not capable of understanding my focuser thoughts like Bandit friend is. Can you teach me how to make it, sister? I wish to be able to make noises to the animals before I make peace with them. I want the animal hive mother to hear and understand my thoughts so she may know I speak truth with my mind and my essence. I want her to truly know me like you do. Yes, I will teach you. I think it is time you shared thoughts with my daughter. A part of her belongs to you, and a part of you belongs to her. I will teach you both, and we will all share thoughts. Republic Orbital Space Dock Complex, geostationary orbit above Earth. Diplomatic Reception Center. President Lopez quickly tugged down on her jacket one last time as she looked down to make sure the translator was in the right position and turned on. The first official meeting between the President of the Republic of Humanity and the Emperor of the Kilthek Dominion was the most important one of her 2 terms by far, and she wanted absolutely no screw-ups. As requested, she was waiting alone as the predatory-looking Kilthek shuttle slipped into the bay and began docking procedures. She always hated how little privacy she had being the president, always surrounded by Pathfinder guards, aides, officials, and advisors. Now that she was truly alone as she waited, she was surprised by how naked and exposed she felt. There had been a nagging feeling that she was forgetting something, or that something was missing while she had been standing there. And now she knew why. It was the absence of all the people that were usually with her, and she chuckled to herself as she realized how incomplete she felt without them around. She quickly reviewed the proper greeting procedures in her head, wishing one of her aides was there to help refresh her memory. Mia, you rely on people too much. This just shows it. Oh well, if you screw this up, there is no one to blame but yourself. She heard the inner airlock hatch opening through the still closed outer hatch, and she straightened herself up, wishing there was a mirror so she could make sure everything was in place. The outer hatch opened, and she kept her face a perfect stone mask as the Emperor of the Kilthek Dominion came stalking out, bending his body to walk under the top of the hatch before straightening himself back up and focusing his large, globular eyes on her. She never realized just how tall the Emperor was, and she found herself being forced to look up to match his threatening stare as his irises changed shape and focused intently on her. A deep atavistic fear welled up inside of her, and she never felt the urge to flee in terror like she did right now. It took all her willpower and training to repress the ancient desire to shove a spear she did not possess into the Emperor's breast and slay the predator that threatened the prehistoric village she did not live in. Adrenaline surged through her as her amygdala begged her to kill or flee, recognizing a primeval terror that should not exist standing before her. It tried to prompt her to preserve her genes and pass them on to the next generation before being eaten alive by the predator in front of her. She felt her knees shaking, and she maintained the stare, refusing to avert her gaze from the Emperor as he stalked closer to her, head bobbing slightly. He finally stopped 3 meters away, towering over her with his 220-centimeter height as his large eyes drilled into hers. She repeated the protocols she had learned for this meeting in her head, turning it into a mantra as the Emperor continued to try to assert his dominance over her with a bluff stare. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally lowered his upper body to bow deeply, his eyes still looking into hers. She returned the gesture, keeping her face up and maintaining the stare as she refused to let the Emperor dominate her. He stayed in the position for some time, knowing it was an awkward and painful stance for humans. Lopez knew exactly what he was doing, and she maintained the stance, her lower back and abdomen spasming from the unnatural position she was forcing them to maintain. Trying to distract herself, she stared at the Emperor and sent thoughts to him as she refused to give in. "I know what you are doing, Emperor. I will stay like this and turn into fucking Smeagol before I let you punk me on my own station. I'm a Marine Pathfinder, you dodo bird-looking bitch. This is my house, not yours, so bring it." Her body trembling, Lopez began counting in her head as she focused on her combat breathing techniques and refused to lose the staring contest. When she counted to the longest 137 seconds of her life, the Emperor finally lifted his body out of the bow and slowly returned to a fully upright position, his eyes no longer conveying the threat of disembowelment. He spread out his wings to their fullest extent and finally broke eye contact, looking down at the deck as he bowed again, keeping his wings fully extended. Lopez almost mirrored his gesture before remembering that he was acknowledging her victory over him and showing her great honor. The Emperor lifted his head again and brought himself to a fully upright position again before bringing his wings back against his body. Articulating his right wing, he brought the wingtip to his large breast, and Lopez could now see the 4 triple-jointed fingers grasping a small device hanging on the harness wrapped around his breast and pressing a button. The Emperor greatly surprised her with how sonorous his voice was as he spoke their language. His translator performed its function, and an emotionless computerized voice issued from it, speaking in Republic Standard. "I yield to you, Empress Lopez of the Human Republic. You have bested me in the Chrome Challenge, and now I see why the Republic has always successfully prevented our attempts to claim that which did not belong to us when we entered your domains. I am Emperor Lixar of the Kilthek Dominion, scion of the royal kill line that stretches unbroken for 821 generations. You have honored me and my people by properly observing our custom, and I am honored to be bested by an adversary such as yourself. I misjudged your true strength, thinking your smallness of body equated to a smallness of spirit. I thought I could dominate you, but it was I who was dominated. I yield to you with no shame. Do you accept my capitulation, Empress Lopez?" Lopez's mind raced furiously as she thought of the proper response. The convoluted protocols of the Kilthek were a confusing blend of contradictory processes. Remembering what she was supposed to say and do, she responded to Emperor Lixar as she spread her arms out wide. "May your line continue unbroken for 10,000 generations, Emperor Lixar of the Noble Kill. I do not accept your yielding, for an Emperor of the Kilthek yields to none but the Creator who made the egg and granted you dominion over your cradle world. I ask that we accept each other as equals, and I thank you for honoring me in my cradle world by coming here. My world is your world, my possessions are your possessions, and I promise to speak only truth to you, Emperor Lixan. Do you accept my words and my vow to you?" The Emperor stared at her for a few moments before stretching out his wings and bowing to her again. This time Lopez mirrored the gesture, lifting herself upright when he did so. The Emperor again regarded her with a look in his eyes that she could not discern before speaking. "I find myself surprised by the correctness of your actions and words, Empress Lopez. I thank you for honoring me and my people with such careful and proper consideration of our customs. I truly did not expect such from you, and I am ashamed of the belligerence I held within my hearts during my journey here. If I may ask, were you the one who granted us the 2 trade routes through your domains? I find your system of government confusing, and I do not know who holds the true power to make such decisions, you or the governing body elected by your citizens. I told you I would be truthful to you, Emperor Lixan. The Senate and Fleet Command had grown tired of your aggressive posturing and frequent border crossings. When you violated our territory and blockaded the colony world of New Australia, both the Senate and Fleet Command had enough and demanded an immediate military response. They both requested that I order the 7th Fleet to New Australia and expel your ships. An already approved declaration of war was submitted to me by the Senate, and the admirals had sent the entire 7th Fleet to that sector for readiness exercises in preparation for my approval, while ordering 3 other fleets to deploy to the border. The 7th Fleet had 1,230 warships, ready and willing to destroy the 200 Kilthek ships around New Australia, and then leading the invasion of the Kilthek Dominion. Coming behind the 7th Fleet were the 4th, 9th and 12th fleets. I had a choice to make, start a war or see what you truly wanted. Emperor Lixan eyed her warily as she spoke, and she saw his pupils constricting as she listed off the fleets that were ready to invade the Kiltek Dominion and destroy their military forces. They did not truly know how powerful the Republic was until the entire 7th Fleet arrived and escorted the Kiltek ships to the border, and she just told him that there were another 3 fleets of the same size deployed and ready to attack them. I am grateful you were Empress and chose peace instead of war. We misjudged your true strength, thinking the few dozen ships you kept along the border were the extent of your military prowess. I remember seeing the video of the massive fleet flashing into space and surrounding our vessels before the signal was jammed, and we lost the connection on our cradle world. They are dead, I thought to myself, and they will now come to end us. We did not know you had such a mighty navy, and I will never forget that you chose to speak to us instead of destroying us. Our economy was collapsing, and we needed to expand our markets. It is our nature to think what we don't have, we must take. This has always been our way. Now I am here. The 2 trade routes you have graciously given us have stabilized our economy, and the Republic Embassy has allowed us to come to know our former adversaries better. Now we see how wrong we were, and we are indebted to you. You asked me to come, and so I have come. Lopez listened as the Emperor spoke plainly, making no attempt to hide the fear and his true thoughts when realizing just how close they came to being wiped out by the Republic. The Republic wouldn't have destroyed them entirely, but they did not know that. Perhaps it was best not to correct their misconception for now until she got their cooperation and the Treaty of Alliance she was going to ask them to sign. Truthfully, though the Kiltek Navy had far fewer ships than the Republic, they were incredibly powerful, and they would have made the Republic Navy bleed for every kilometer of space they took. Exactly the type of allies she needed at her side for the coming war with the Balricans. I am grateful that you decided to talk as well, Emperor Lixan. There is a reason I asked you to come here, and we do not have much time. There is an evil enemy coming to our region of space, and they do not negotiate. They do not form alliances or believe in neutrality, and they seek to attack and destroy all the species of this quadrant. They believe in only one thing, that every sentient and sapient species needs to be destroyed for the masters they worship. They are coming to kill us all, and the Republic is determined to fight them to the bitter end before we allow them to kill our friends and allies. I asked you here because I am hoping you will join with me and fight them with us. The Kiltek Dominion and the Republic of Humanity, fighting together as friends and allies do when war comes upon them. The Emperor stared at her for a long time, his large eyes unnaturally still as she felt his gaze penetrating into her soul. Finally, he spoke again, this time speaking in an unaccented Republic standard, as if he had been speaking it all his life. The Emperor ignored her surprised expression and asked her a question. How many, Empress Lopez? How many ships come to destroy our people? Lopez activated her wrist comm, a hologram springing up between them as she accessed the most recent scouting videos, and displayed them for the Emperor to see. Massive formations of tens of thousands of angular black ships appeared, the videos being taken from multiple systems by spy drones and brave Republic scouts. My scouts and spy drones report they have counted over 151,000 enemy ships, and more are coming every single day. They are located 6,000 light-years away, and soon they will come here. Emperor Lixan bobbed his head several times as he processed what she had just told him, his large pupils rapidly dilating and contracting as he watched the videos and images being displayed. He turned his gaze to her after he had seen enough and spoke again. Tell me more. Lopez nodded at the Emperor before turning sideways and gesturing towards the hatchway opposite the one he had come out of. Please, Emperor Lixan, we will go to the conference room and discuss this in more detail. You may have your staff attend as well. They are welcome to the station. Bobbing his head again, the Emperor reached up with his right wingtip and spoke into the communication device on his harness. The melodious language of the Kiltek flowing from his beak as he started walking towards the hatch Lopez had directed him to. Lopez followed him, feeling hopeful for what was to come based on their initial meeting.